Just allow me a minute, guys. We were facing some technical challenge here, so just setting up the screen. Just allow me a minute. Yeah, so cool. Okay. Cool. Again, apologies, guys, for joining. For starting this stream a bit late. So we were having some technical challenge, and we were trying to close that up. I think we're anyway bit more than our expected time. So I'm waiting for a couple of more minutes to let people still join in. And as always, it's pretty much a live session. So any questions, anything which you want to discuss, you can type up your questions in the chat, and we are following it up, and I'll try to answer it the time we see it. Cool. So please utilize the time, guys, and we can always have discussions over the chat. So if people are around, please do drop hi or hello in the chat so that we can get started. But in short, today's agenda is to talk about data scientists, right? So anyway, it's a buzzword, and a lot of people talk about you becoming as a data scientist. So we are going to figure out who are these data scientists, right? And what exactly data scientists comprise of. So is there something which is very specific, which are we going to look at? Or we still revolve around the similar things which we have seen in some or the other way, right? So that is something pretty much we are going to talk about in our today's discussion. But again, as always, at any point of time, if you have any questions, anything which you feel I would have to repeat something, so please feel free to reach out, and then we can always talk on that. Okay, so it's pretty much a live session. So you can drop in your questions in the chat, and then we can talk about it. Okay. Cool, guys. So I think it's the right time to get started, and then we'll talk about our concerned topic for the day. But before proceeding further, my name is Arpit Jain, and the only reason I am here with you all because data science is my true passion, and I really like sharing my expertise with everyone around. So that's pretty much who I am, and what I really like about it. Technical front, I have been into analytics for quite some time, and then using the related tools in tech according to all of these profiles. So I've been using machine learning, stats, deep learning, so whatever you can think of around this area. And I've been developing and deploying the tools and the models respectively. So that's a brief intro about myself. So any questions, anything, I'll highly appreciate everybody to come forward and be open and talk about your concern area so that we can address them likewise. Okay, so but for today, the agenda is to talk about who are data scientists, very prominent questions. And if you would have talked to multiple people around you, you might have seen or you might have heard the buzzword, the data scientist, right? Similar to what you can think of the other profiles as, right? So yes, on paper, definitely there are few guidelines or few expectations from the roles and the responsibilities perspective of a data scientist. But in our discussion, we'll also try to figure out the holistic view of who the data scientists are and whatever we have learned or understood so far from the data science journey or data science as a subject. So how exactly data scientist fits in the data science field, right? So who are these people? Who are these smart people who are actually performing the things which is needed out of the industry. So we are going to talk about that. Okay. So if you remember the different use cases we have been talking about in our last few discussions. So we talked about Netflix, we were talking about Uber, right? So if you remember, we were talking about certain problem statements there, right? So when we talked about Netflix, if you remember, we talked about how Netflix is leveraging the power of data to solve its respective business use cases. And obviously, if the Netflix is in a particular field or a particular domain, the problem statement which Netflix will try to resolve will be specific to its business. But those problem statements, we clearly talk about how data can play a big role in solving those problems. That's where data science comes into picture in solving those problems. So if you remember a couple of problem statements, so we talked about recommendations. We talked about recommendations, right? So we talked about if you are watching a particular movie of X or Y and Z in genre, so based on your past history, based on your profile, based on your demographic also, you start seeing some recommendations on your screen. Very simple use case. And it is not only valid for Netflix, it is actually valid for pretty much everywhere, right? All the online platforms, like in these days you're seeing, whether it is an online merchandise store or something else, you are seeing those recommendations. So think about it, how it's happening in the background and how does that get processed, right? So what is the entire ecosystem behind that? So if you think about getting a recommendation for any particular product, then we talk about having an ecosystem behind that. And for that ecosystem, there's a process, right? So very first thing, what we look at is the data. If you do not have data for the respective different parts of your problem statements, like in this case, we talk about the user demographics. So what is, certain user demographics of my customer? Like for example, user one is of this age, this gender, this locality, what device he is using. So a lot of different user level information is getting captured, right? That's where we have the user demographics. So getting the data itself is one of the very prime activities we're looking at, right? So data, to get the data, and not only this source, multiple other sources. We talk about the viewership, what different things you are actually watching on your subscription, right? So all of these small detailed level data collection is one of the prime activities which is happening in part of solving this business problem, which is one of the prime subtopic of my entire ecosystem, the entire process, data collection. Then obviously, when we say that we are trying to give you the recommendations for particular user, we have a lot of other things are happening. So once we have the data, we obviously have to get out some inferences out of it, and from those inferences we draw some patterns, and then we ultimately try to combine lot of inferences and ultimately try to give whatever output we need. And in this case, the output should be the recommended movie name, for example, right? So the ecosystem which is helping you do all of these things in your space is pretty much is available. It's pretty much what the data science umbrella talks about. But the person, the people, like you and I, like us as a data scientist, We are the people who are actually running the show in the background. So the people, the smart people who are actually doing these things in the background, they are some or the other way called as data scientists, right? So now when I say data scientist, so data scientist as a person is nobody rather than solving this problem statement for you. So this person, this smart person, is actually getting the data and is able to perform some analysis on top of that. And based on this analysis, he is able to give some decision on the respective work which we're talking about. And this could be, the decision could be an inference based. Like for example, whatever pattern has happened. So maybe if the user has watched more of comedy movies or a genre of comedy, I would rather recommend something closer to that genre to him. I would not rather go with a horror movie, something like that. So more like an inference base. I'm drawing the inference from the past pattern and then I'm taking a decision based on that. Or it could again be something from a predictions perspective. Other use cases, like we talked about fraud, no fraud, like a bank identifying the customers who is going to fraud or default on my loan. So multiple problem statements, we talk about all of these ecosystem where these problem statements are getting solved, and that is where data scientist comes into picture. So data scientist is nothing but a person who is better at statistics than any software engineer and better at software engineering than any statistician. So it's basically a combination of a person who is also having a knowledge of statistics along with the software engineering, right? Statistics plus software engineering, that is where the objective of the data scientists is getting accomplished. So when I say statistics, I'm talking about having a knowledge of identifying the key insights from the data. And for that, you definitely need some statistical analysis to be happening around, right? So you need the knowledge of statistics. A person, in short, a person who is better at statistics than any software engineer, and at the same time also better at software engineering than any statistician. A prime combination of statistics and software engineering, that's what data scientists are comprised of. Okay, so obviously at the end of the day, the objective of these people is to help business take some respective decisions, and these respective decisions could be inference based and also it could be prediction based. It is not always mandatory to have the problem solved using only the prediction way. Okay, now there are a couple of things which you have to keep in mind. So we have been talking about a lot of other designations as well. So in our previous class, we talked about multiple different roles, if you remember. So we talked about prime three roles. We talked about data analyst. We talked about data scientist. And then we talked about data engineer. So these are my prime three roles we have been talking about: data analyst, data scientist, and data engineer. So data analyst, people who are more inclined towards the statistical analysis of my data, which includes stats, and also SQL is prime. So SQL, Python. So these become, or some BI tools also. So these becomes my prime requirement of a data analyst. But when I say data scientist, so these are the people who are doing everything almost what an analyst does. So we can simply say analyst plus machine learning. Right? So in short, data scientists are the people who are actually doing almost everything what an analyst does. That includes the statistical analysis, my SQL, extraction, my Python, everything what these people do, along with the machine learning part on top of that. Right? So that's where the data scientist comes into picture. The third category of role, which I was talking about, data engineer. So these are my DevOps guy of data science. So let's try to go deep and let's try to understand what defines in detail about the data scientist, because guys, the only reason, the only intent behind having this specific class is to make sure that there is no confusion understanding the role and the responsibility of a data scientist. And still I'm telling you, there could be multiple cases where your role might or your designation might still not be of data scientist. It might be XYZ, like a product analyst or a risk analyst or a machine learning engineer. I'm least bothered with the designation. Your designation still could be anything else, XYZ. But at the end of the day, if your job description revolves around the task which I'm talking about, collection of my data, manipulation of my data, sorry, doing some statistical analysis around your data, and on top of that, you're applying the AI ML technique to generalize these patterns and predict what's going to happen in future, you are inclined towards a data scientist kind of a role. So guys, always be mindful of this. Your designations might vary from company to company, but your end objective is still to have the role in place, which is data scientist, which you're trying to solve from the business perspective, right? So let's try to understand the detailing of my job role which I'm talking about. But before that, as always, let's take one quote for the day. That is, in this part, that which cannot be measured cannot be proven. So data here, or anything which is in data science we talk about, we always talk about measurement. If we cannot measure something, it can never be proved. How can I be sure that whatever I'm saying right now, that is the best thing I have? I need to have some backing for that. If I cannot measure it, like for example, we talk about, say, age being one of the prominent factors for my default of my loan. Yes, very, very general trend we have been seeing. But how exactly age has been identified as one of the prime factors for default? So we talk about correlations here. So there is a mathematics in the background, statistical technique, which eventually is measuring this relationship in terms of a number. So anything which cannot be measured cannot be proven. And in data science field, we always talk in terms of numbers. Everything has to be measured. So measurement of anything, whatever we're doing, is very, very, very important. And that is where we will be focusing on as well. Okay. But going forward, sticking to what we are intended to study today, data scientists. So data scientists are among the most recent analytical data professionals who have the technical ability to handle complicated issues as well as the desire to investigate what questions need to be answered. Very, very, very important point here, guys. We talk about solving the business problem, right? And these are the smart people who do have the technical ability to handle the complicated issues. When I say technical ability, and that is where the skills comes into picture, right? When I talk about skills, similar things, statistics, SQL, Python, towards my AI/ML part, something towards my BI technologies, business intelligence. Sorry. So these are the people who are actually having the technical abilities to take care of these respective skills. So from the technical skills standpoint of view, we are still talking about the similar skills which have been revolving around the ecosystem of data science. Yes, obviously, there are many other skills as well which are prominently there. That includes some engineering topics, big data, Hadoop, Hive, microservices, a lot of things are there. The list is never ending. So when I talk about these things, yes, obviously, if you keep on adding multiple technical abilities, obviously, why not? You'll always be preferred. But is it technically feasible for everybody to be good in everything? Might be not. Maybe true for somebody, but not applicable for everyone. So we always talk about certain prioritization of roles and responsibilities, and that is where we have understood data scientists are the people who are expected to be good in the statistical referencing, and at the same time able to help the business take some business decisions either through inferential stats or from the predicted stats. But even on top of that, the very important thing is your communication. So as I've always said, so these are the smart people who always have a desire to investigate what questions need to be answered. So even before solving what you are expected to solve, you are expected to first ask the questions. If you do not know what you are getting into, what problem statements you're trying to solve, it is never going to benefit you. So it's always advisable. So data scientists are those people who have the eye for the respective details. So what questions need to be answered, that becomes one of the prime responsibilities of data scientists. So your client might still not be knowing what exactly they're looking at. They might give you a point blank statement, but to get the right questions asked is one of the prime objectives of a good data scientist. And as you can see, they are a mix of mathematicians, computer scientists, and trend forecasters. So very good detailing here. When I say mathematicians, I truly talk about the person who can play with numbers, right? And that is what we are doing in statistics as well. So we are pretty much intended to understand how the numbers are playing in my data science role, correct? So we always talk about people who are very good in mathematics or who have the detailing for my numbers, so statisticians. So when I say statistics is one of the prime requirement of you becoming a data scientist, then yes, that is where we say that data scientists are a mix of mathematicians, including my statistics skills, plus the computer scientist knowledge as well. The computer scientist, I mean, you're able to take care of my coding part, like the software engineering part, Python, platforms like SQL, does play a very important role. So you are able to take care of statistics not only theoretically, not only on pen and paper, but from a coding standpoint of view, from a software engineering point of view. That is the reason why a mixture of mathematics, computer scientists, that's where my coding aspects comes into picture, and also at the last, trend forecasters. By trend forecasters now has the ability from generalizing the pattern which has happened in the past from the historical data. We can talk about the future, what is going to happen. We can talk about how exactly we can look forward to details in the future. Right? So we talk about how the future looks towards us in terms of machine learning, artificial intelligence. That's where we talk about how my future talks about. So data scientists are the right combination of mathematicians, computer scientists, and as well as my trend forecasters. And also at the same time, you can see here, they are also in high demand because now, every now and then you'll be seeing the companies are investing a lot on data. And technically everywhere, whether it is a business or IT sector, data is everywhere. So every single industry is looking for a person who is having the right set of technical ability and who is having the right set of statistics knowledge and also has been working towards the software engineering part, the computer scientist, plus the machine learning. That involves my data scientist job. So business, IT sectors, every single field, and even in the IT sectors, I can talk about my domain. So whether it is a finance, automobile, manufacturing, telecommunication, you name it, data scientists are everywhere. So being a data scientist, you are the person who is working on data. And whether that data is coming from whether it is coming from a healthcare industry or a business or a web data or a telecommunication, hardly matters. The domain part of it does play a role with time, with experience. But data scientist is the person who is playing on data, and that data could be from anywhere, right? So yes, the data scientist role is pretty much in demand. So because the only reason is now the industries, the businesses, they have started leveraging the use of data and they want to back up all the business decisions which they're trying to make based on the availability of data what they have. So that is what we're looking at here, right? So data scientist, pretty much a high demand role. The only reason is because we're trying to look at how this is getting leveraged in different industries and how businesses are now using data for their respective decision making job. So on a day-to-day basis, yes, data scientist also has their respective R&R, the roles and the responsibilities. So we'll be looking at these one by one. So on a daily basis, a data scientist may do the following tasks. So we are going to look at the following tasks on a daily basis. First, we talk about discovering the patterns and the trends in data set to get insights. So we talk about identifying the right patterns and the trends to get my insights of my data. So when I say patterns, again, you have to always understand that we always talk about the data, right? So identifying the right set of patterns and the trends in the data is very important to get my insights. And that is where, on a day-to-day basis, this becomes one of the prime tasks of a data scientist. This also includes creating the forecast model and the algorithm for the future. So we're talking about from this patterns or the trends which we have identified as part of an insights. So I'm trying to generalize this trend and making sure that this can be used for our future predictions. So whatever trend has been identified with the help of certain algorithm, that's where machine learning comes into picture. The data scientists are the people who are going to create these forecasting algorithms and ultimately prepare the model for the future forecasts. Hello, Arav. Okay. Third point, then we say improving the quality of my data or product offerings by utilizing the machine learning techniques. Very important point. So data, guys, data is prominently everywhere, right? And but by that, we have to always understand the quality of data, how exactly this is going to be used. So whenever I try to solve a business problem, it is never true that the very data which you get from the business is going to have the best quality available to that. So, but by leveraging the science behind that, by leveraging the multiple techniques as part of the technical ability, data scientists, they always keep on improving or working towards improving the quality of my data. By quality of data, I mean the nature of data which I have. So maybe towards, how sufficient it is to qualify for a certain trend, or what is my input source, or what is my basic strength or depth, all of this, right? So that is where the quality of data comes into picture. So next, distribute suggestions to other teams and top management. Yes, data scientists' day-to-day activities might also include helping the business or helping the top management or the team members to take or suggest few strategic decisions backed by the data. So if you have hold on top of what data says for the business, we can absolutely help the business take some respective decisions. Again, one of the very prime day-to-day tasks which data scientists perform. And for these, they use the data tools such as R, SAS, Python, or SQL. And they're more towards data science innovations. When I say R, SAS, Python, or SQL, guys, so just to again clarify around this area. So when I talk about data analysis, so yes, we have multiple platforms which actually takes care of the data science part that includes R, SAS, Python. So the codings and all, the platform on which you'll be performing this coding task would be multiple. So we talk about R, SAS, Python, so multiple other platforms where you will still be working on it. Depending on the industries, depending on the platform flexibility, yes, the companies, the organization chooses one or the other platforms, but it's still very subjective. On the other hand, SQL is the platform through which you interact with the databases, right? So there could be multiple tools, multiple platforms on which you can still perform your activities, but Selection wise, on top of everything, Python definitely has a lot of multiple advantages, and that is where it does surpass other different platforms. So quickly we're going to read through the job role. So job role, a data scientist analyzes my business data to extract some meaningful insights. In other words, a data scientist solves the business problem through a series of steps. We're going to be talking about that. So basically, data scientist, from the job role perspective, they are going to analyze the business data to extract some meaningful insights. That's where the role of a statistician or a mathematician comes into picture. So we're talking about analyzing of my business data, and talk about extraction of my meaningful insights. So ultimately, whenever I'm trying to analyze my data, my end objective in this analysis process is to find out some interesting, meaningful insights out of it. And when I have this meaningful insight, then I say that yes, this is where I have the respective information. So in other words, a data scientist is solving a business problem through a series of steps. Basically, it's not I have a problem statement and I can only say that, okay, do this, your problem is done. No. For any business problem to be solved by a data scientist, it requires a series of certain steps. That's what we're going to talk about. So very first, before tackling the data collection and the analysis, the data scientist determines the problem by asking the right questions and gaining the understanding. So before even getting into the data collection phase, so I'm not even going towards my data collection phase right now. So we're still talking about asking the right questions. So asking the right questions itself is a very, very, very important thing. So we always talk about solving a problem. When I say a client is looking for a particular problem statement to be solved in data science, we have to make sure that we have understood the problem perfectly. So asking the right questions is generally very underrated in some point of time, and we generally don't realize the importance of asking the right questions. But in terms of solving any data science problem, it is always mandatory to understand what you are getting into. To solve the business problem, you need to make sure that you have the right set of understanding, and for that you need to have the right set of thought process to ask the relevant questions to your business. So before even getting into the data collection troubles and everything, your understanding of your problem statement is very important. So because we always talk about narrow AI, right? We always talk about the weak AI, where we have the limited set of problem statement. Only one problem statement we're talking about here, only one at a time. We're not solving multiple problem statements. So you need to have a clarity of thought what problem statement you're going to solve. What is your objective, right? So that is something which is very important before even jumping into the things. But obviously it does not stop here. Then the data scientist determines the correct set of variables and the data sets. Once we have understood the problem statement, then we talk about the data collection phase, right? So first, identification of my problem. Second, once the problem has been identified, then we talk about determining the correct set of variables. So what all features, what all data points we would need to solve this problem statement. That's what we talk about here. So determining the correct set of variables and the data sets becomes my prime requirement here. So then the data scientist determines the correct set of variables and the data sets. And the data scientist gathers the structured and the unstructured data from many disparate sources, enterprise data, public data, etc. So once we have identified the potential set of data points which we might need to solve that respective problem statement, then the process of data collection comes into picture. So the first phase is identification. Second is data collection. Sorry. So yes, data scientists are prominently involved in both of these activities, because if we do not know what data, what problem statement we are getting into, how are we expected to solve that problem statement? So identification of the right set of problem is very important. So identifying the set of variables, and once that problems is identified, set of variables, I'm going to talk about collection of my databases. So gathering the structured as well as my unstructured data from multiple other sources. It could be an enterprise database, it could be a public available data on the web page, or many other sources. So whatever the source is, once the set of potential features or the variables have been identified, the next job of a data scientist is to gather the respective data points from multiple other data sources. Right? So that's again one of the prime job roles of a data scientist. And once the data is collected, by what so many means. So if it is an enterprise data, it could be SQL as a platform where we can use it for extraction purpose. If it is a publicly available data, we can simply download it if that is the case. Or if it is a web page, we can probably use Python to do a web scraping. So depending on what is my source of my data, we're trying to gather it by either way, depending on whatever platform we would be needing. The ultimate objective is to gather this data, structured or unstructured. And once the data is collected, the data scientist then processes the raw data, converts it into a format suitable for analysis. And yes, this involves cleaning and validating the data to guarantee uniformity, completeness, and accuracy. So after the data collection phase, we talk about data manipulation. So we have identified the right set of data points, the variables. We have collected it from multiple other sources using multiple techniques and tools. And once collected, now we talk about processing this raw data to a usable format for analysis. And obviously this will include multiple steps, my cleaning process, my validating process, my accuracy, uniformity, outliers, lot of different techniques are involved. We will be going through them one by one. But after collecting the data, it has to be made sure that the collected data is now being formatted in the right way for analysis. That's where the third and the prime task comes towards my data manipulation. Now, once we have manipulated the data, so after the data has been rendered into a usable form, it's fed into an analytical system, my ML algorithm. So fourth step is my modeling phase. So after the processing of my data, after we have identified its usefulness, then the process of ML algorithm comes into picture. Got it? So then is the reason, then is the place where we talk about how ML algorithms are used and what makes it suitable for the rendering purpose. So we use ML algorithm for the modeling of my data. Then we talk about how this ML model can play a role here in solving the business problem. So after the cleaning process, ML algorithm comes into picture. So when the data has been completely rendered and the data scientist interprets the data to find the opportunities and solutions. So post this modeling phase, now we talk about, based on this result, finding the right set of opportunities, establishing the relationships. So from this modeling activity, identifying the right solutions for my business problems. Then the data scientist finished the task by preparing the results and insights to share with the appropriate stakeholders and communicating the results. The fifth phase is communication. So that's how my entire job role of a data scientist looks like. So once we have identified the problem statement, we talk about collecting of my problem data, the respective set of features we talk about. Post collection phase, we talk about the cleaning process, the data manipulation. Post manipulation, we talk about data modeling. And once modeling is done, we try to look at the potential problem statements, we try to look at the potential solutions, and then the insights which we have identified, we prepare the results and share it across the right stakeholders. So why data scientist? So after understanding everything, why still data scientist? Yes, it is very, very, very exciting job. And according to the Glassdoor and Forbes, demand for data scientists will increase by 28% by 2026. And furthermore, the profession of data scientist is a highly paying job, an average salary of USD 127,500 according to a survey in the US. So multiple good reasons why you still look for a data scientist role. It is a very exciting job. It needs every day new challenges. You'll be seeing every day new challenges and you'll be learning every single day. And obviously it's a new emerging role. So demand for data scientists is expected to grow by 28% by 2026, depending on as per one survey, Secure Career. And also, according to a survey, it's a very highly paid job. So average base salary is comparatively higher than the other roles. So obviously, prominent designations, the prominent roles where we look at the data scientist falls into place. So with all of this, guys, this is what I wanted to cover for today. So giving you a detailed insight of who data scientists are and why you should still look at the data scientist profile. But again, you have to always be very sure of what the R&R, the roles and the responsibilities of things look like and how we are going to solve the problems respective to each of my cases here. Cool, guys. So with this, any questions, I'm more than happy to take it. And if not, thank you so much for being patient and listening to me. So we'll meet the other day with another interesting subtopic, guys. So any questions, any last moment questions, please let me know. I can take that, or else we can wrap it up. Cool. So with this, guys, thank you so much for being patient as always, and see you in the next video. Thank you so much. Bye bye.